And within the first 10 minutes of texting it, he convinced it to shut my Mac Mini down.
Here's one thing that I do want to get into. So the gateway, right?
So a gateway, it's basically like one interface between the brain of your LLM and then the surface or the channels where you can access it, right? So out of the gate, it comes with WhatsApp, Telegram, Slack, Discord. I think a couple other ones, like not so popular channels, but it's got all these channel configurations baked into it, right? And so you have this like workspace configuration that you can just turn on or off with a simple line in the config file. So the gateway is essentially the middle layer between the brain of the LLM and where the content goes from the LLM. So the gateway is kind of like the central hub for all the files in the agent workspace so that it knows what it's supposed to do, what tools it can use, and where to look for all of the configuration files for those tools, and then who's allowed to invoke those kind of operations. So like if you want somebody to be able to message in Slack, and then your agent is allowed to go, look into your CRM and look for a contact and return that information to the Slack channel, that is the gateway's responsibility. The gateway is the one that says, okay, I got a message in Slack. Am I allowed to do anything from this channel or from this person, depending on what my allow list is?
Yeah.
And then if it says yes, right, then it comes down to like the agent and the tools that it has of saying like, okay, I am allowed to go look in the CRM, right? And I'm allowed to give it back. But if this agent does not have that skill or does not have that, allow list on the channels that it can interact with, then none of it's going to happen. So that's what the gateway is responsible for. It's basically just the master controller for who's allowed to do what and what agents control what.
And how easy is it to operate this gateway thing? I guess if that's the master control.
The cool thing that I like about what they did out of the box is that they took this bootstrap approach, which is probably one of the more, I guess not super unique, but they did it does it really well, where its first job is to learn about itself and understand what it can and can't do. And then the gateway, when you're interacting with the model through the gateway, so like let's say you're in the web chat, right, which it comes with a web chat out of the box. If you're in like the web UI and you're talking to the model, it has the ability to modify files and restart the gateway. So you have full control over the gateway while you're chatting with it. And so as long as you kind of understand the structure of how, everything connects, you can ask it questions. You can have it onboard itself. But this is where the danger starts to come in. And this is where I think it's a good pivot to talk about how dangerous it is to let it set itself up.
Yeah. To recap a couple of the points he was talking about, the allow list essentially, and I tested this knowing a lot less than Quentin does, and out of the box, pretty like it's pre-set up solid, and I messed with the config file and everything like that. I had one of my employees try to message it and hack me via my Facebook connection and everything, and I set it up so it could I wanted to see if it did it. It was going to post hello world on my Facebook or whatever, so I gave it Chrome access for the test. Yeah. And then like it was like, I'm sorry, I can't follow your request until David tells me, and it didn't. It refused to do it from her user in Discord. And it just refused, and then I took over. Like, all right, joke's over. Let's go.
And like the first day that I did it, I was super excited because I put it on my Mac Mini so that it can iMessage. Like that's the biggest thing I wanted to do, because dealing with A2P, and like if you're listening to this and you're in the high level community, you understand the A2P.
His whole entire business used to be like chat message, like all this stuff. So This is the guy to ask about this stuff.
Dude, yeah. So I was just like, I just want to see if I can, for my own use case, if I can get the iMessage to work and it can just text as me and only do outbound message and maybe see if it can respond to inbound messages. So I turned it on and I gave it access to like two people. I gave two numbers that were allowed to text it. And one of them was my uncle. And within the first 10 minutes of texting it, he convinced it to shut my Mac Mini down. And it literally did. Like, it didn't say gateway restart, it just killed the process.
Yeah.
And so that's like a perfect example of just, it's so easy for this thing to just have too much permission and be able to just really wreak havoc and leak stuff that you don't want it to
A
leak.
question for you about that, and you guys may or may not understand this yet, but we're going to get into it more to where you will. You had that on an admin level user account on the Mac Mini, so it had full shell access.
Yeah.
Okay. So I didn't do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Part by the wisdom of Quentin telling me, like, so I was a little nervous about installing it on my Mac, but I put it on a strict, like, permissions restricted type of user or whatever. So I don't think mine would actually be able to do that. I actually have to sign. Yeah, I was even, like, before this call, I was signing out of my other things. I didn't want it to bug up the connection. And I had to input my password, my admin password, for it to let me do that, So,
But like, if you can run it on a container, because again, it's an app and it can be run by Docker. And so Docker is an isolated container that you can put outside of your root machine. But that does limit you on what it can do in terms of copying, downloading files, like being able to access the browser natively, all the stuff that a lot of people are excited about it being able to do. You kind of have to give that up if you want it to be like ultimately secure.
it's kind of a little bit nerve wracking sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Like, just imagine if you're just giving your credit card over to a brand new employee. It's essentially that. You don't trust them. You don't know them. You don't know what the hell they're going to do.
Yeah.
You don't know if they have bad intentions. This is
Yeah.
worse because it's like an AI. It doesn't have a soul, or I mean, like, I don't know.
It's like having an autistic employee, right? It's like they're going to do it perfectly every time, but they're not going to not do it when they're not supposed to because there's not the clues there. So like that's kind of how I think about it, is like, and that's why I think from, a brain mapping perspective, you can't look at this as just an app that's going to sit dormant on your machine. And that's where it's dangerous. Like once you give it a channel, it has the ability to respond to requests based on what you've given it access to. And so that's what a lot of people don't really think about. They don't think about like shutting it down when they leave or locking it down on certain channels. And that's really the dangerous part.